is so great to see you all again. Thank you for coming. It feels like a homecoming. I was here in August with Ed Townley, but there just wasn't enough time for all the lunches and dinners and parties and people I needed to see, so I had to come back. Besides North Park Mall. I stood right here on this spot for the first time on May 16th, 1999. I was about to finish seminary and be ordained, and I was trying out for a job here as the associate minister with David and Donna McClure. So I wore my best dress, and I gave my best talk. I said, when one door closes, another one opens, but it can be hell in the hallway. You're in the hallway when something has changed, when you know your life will never be the same again, but you don't know what's coming next. And when I gave that talk, you all reacted the way most people do. Yes, I'm in the hallway. Now I have a name for it. Some of you have told me you still listen to that talk, and you use that term, the hallway, to describe periods of uncertainty. And I've never stopped talking about the hallway either. So when Robert Edwards called and said you all were inviting back your old ministers to reprise the best talk they ever gave, it was perfect timing, because the book, Hell in the Hallway, Light at the Door, should be out any day now, actually in 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. Jennifer in the bookstore has promised to let you know when it's here, and it'll be on Amazon and everywhere else, on paper or electronically. I hope you'll read it, if only because so many of you are in it. Now, don't sit there and worry about that. If you're in it, you know it, okay? Don't be sitting there thinking, oh my God, did she talk about me? No, if you're in it, you've signed a permission form and you've read exactly what I'm going to say about you. But I'm eternally grateful for the hallway stories that you shared with me. They are so inspiring. And I'm happy for a chance to talk about the hallway with you again. This is actually the first hallway talk I've given since I finished the book. And I've learned some things since 1999, at least I hope I have. If you use the hallway as a metaphor to describe going through changes in your life, it falls naturally into 3 parts. Something puts you in the hallway, and then what do you do while you're there, and how do you get out? Notice, getting out is not the first thing to work on. A lot of bad decisions can be made in a panic to feel better. Okay, just hold that thought. What puts you in the hallway could be the death of a loved one. There's a period of adjustment after that. Divorce, learning a new way of living, losing a job, going bankrupt. Sometimes a door slams. You get up on what you think will be a normal day, and by the end of the day, life has changed. You got a terrible phone call, you got a diagnosis, something's different. Other doors creak shut slowly, like the year or two before you know your child will be leaving home, or a year or two before you know you're going to retire. That's kind of a double hallway. There's the hallway on the way to that event, and then the hallway of adjustment afterwards. Some hallways are chosen. Anytime you change jobs, move to a new city, even buying and selling a house can create some hallways. It's a place of uncertainty, and it can be uncomfortable even though we chose it. I chose the hallway when I left my job as a reporter to go to ministerial school, and I was terrified, even though I knew it was my path. It was a long period of uncertainty. Some hallways are entirely within you. In Unity, we call it divine restlessness. We know there's something more for us. We know something's got to give, but we just don't know what yet. You're being called higher spiritually, but it can feel like wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Entire groups can go through hallways together. You are in one now, as a church waiting to see who your next minister will be. Or think of an office staff waiting to find out who gets laid off. Or a city that has been hit by a tornado or a flood, or even a mass shooting. Life as they knew it together has changed. They're in the hallway. And there's a type of hallway I didn't realize until people started telling me I was leaving something out. Call it the endless hallway. I hear about this most often from families where someone is mentally ill, or maybe a child has Down syndrome. The circumstances are not going to change or get better. The only door to be opened is within, finding peace and acceptance. Caregiving in general is a rough hallway, like having a parent with Alzheimer's or a spouse with cancer, but most of the time you know it will eventually end. Sadly, in endless hallways, circumstances will never change as long as you live. It's hard to even hear, isn't it? I encourage you to feel whatever you feel in the hallway. Feel it now or dredge it up in therapy 10 years from now. And yes, it hurts. And yes, it's uncomfortable. You might be angry. You might know your life will never be the way you thought you wanted it to be, and you don't know how it's going to unfold next. Lean into the pain. I know that's easier said than done, but people who move through the hallway successfully move through the pain. There's no way around it. It is tempting just to look for the first doorway out. I said, hold that thought, that getting out is not the first thing to work on. Let me tell you a story about a man most of you know, John Webster. If you didn't know John, he was a beloved minister in this church for 30 years. He was in charge of pastoral care, so he prayed with people all the time. The Peace Chapel's named for him. John, years ago, wrote his hallway story for me. I still have it in his handwriting on notebook paper. His story starts with the death of his first wife. She died 2 days before his 40th birthday. And he had 2 half-grown girls at home and a job that required traveling all the time. So what did John do? He got married as soon as he could. At last, someone to cook and clean and take care of those children. And when he told me that story decades later, he said he'd really been looking for a housekeeper, and that's how he treated her. That marriage lasted a year. Not to be daunted, he tried again. That marriage lasted 8 years, and during that time, John felt he did a lot of damage to his relationship with his younger daughter, who was still at home. Then he started learning about spiritual principles. He started changing from the inside out. And so when we knew him, he was married to Abby. He healed his relationship with his daughter. He served and taught and uplifted so many people until he died 5 years ago. I think he was 84. John learned there's no quick way out of the hallway, and the discomfort can be intense. There's a spiritual author I like named Mirabai Starr. Her 14-year-old daughter was killed in a car accident. And Mirabai called her hallway a time of radical unknowingness. But she vowed to her daughter who died, I will honor you by not turning away from this fire of grief. This fire of grief. Every hallway is about grief. Something has been lost. So feel whatever you feel. And remember to let people support you. It's okay for them to just sit with you in silence, to bring you tea, to give you rides, whatever you need for a while. We will all be in the hallway at times. We can support each other. So you're in the hallway. Now what do? Short answer is pull out every spiritual tool you know. The early hallway is a terribly vulnerable time, not only because your life has changed, but because it's so easy to beat yourself up. Why didn't I see this coming? Why didn't I take better care of my health? Why wasn't I more careful with money? I've been a terrible parent, son, daughter, wife, husband, fill in the blank. And sometimes, how could God let this happen? But you see how we create our own hell in the hallway with our thoughts? The hallway doesn't have to be hell. It can be a time of visioning the infinite possibilities. But most people don't start there. It's important to note that the spiritual work of the hallway does not depend on the circumstances that put you there. Yes, death is different from divorce, is different from losing your job. And at some point, you'll need to deal with your specific circumstances, like looking for another job. But the spiritual work is the same, no matter the circumstances. And it starts with acceptance. You see, a door has closed and latched, so you turn around and look at where you are now. Oh, I'm in the hallway. My life really has changed. Now what? Here is my gentle suggestion to help you accept whatever has happened. Consider that this is not happening to you, it's happening for you. What shows up in your life is there for a reason, and somehow it's for your highest good, your soul's growth. And for me, that shifts the question. Okay, if this is happening for me, then where is the good? What gifts is this bringing? And I start to look for the good. Now, you probably won't immediately see the vast sweep of your lifetime and how this fits into it. You'll start to see good in small ways first, in the friends who check on you, in the love you feel from others, in the depth of your prayers. And the good won't stop. Everything that happens in your life brings gifts and answers your soul's deepest desires. We could talk about this all day, but you know the spiritual principle of attraction. We draw to us whatever we need in this lifetime, most of it unconsciously. But when we decide to participate with that, miracles happen. Brenda Lonergan, who is from this church, couldn't be here today, but she shared her story for the book. She's one of many people I know who have been through cancer and say, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I wouldn't trade the spiritual growth it brought me. Brenda says for a long time after she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she was stuck in why me? Because she already knew we create our own reality, so why would she create this? She was about 4 weeks into chemo when she woke up one morning and just knew, if I'm going to heal this, I have to take responsibility for creating it. It doesn't mean she wanted cancer. It doesn't mean she had sat around and thought about cancer until she got it. It also doesn't mean she quit treatments to go meditate and affirm herself back to health. It was about becoming a co-creator with God, drawing on the one presence and power within her to change what she could. So she would ask herself every day, am I really being positive? Am I really taking care of myself? Am I listening to the messages from my body? She put her spiritual tools to work. She released the outcome and just focused on each day, making a point to appreciate every moment. So on days when she could only stagger from the bed to the sofa, she was grateful for that. And she met every person with compassion. Brenda got well, but even if she hadn't, living in appreciation and compassion is pretty much the highest spiritual plane we can achieve. I was surprised how many people who told me about going through physical illness said they had to take responsibility for getting well, for creating their own health. And notice how Brenda said she let go of the outcome. Acceptance leads to surrender. Our pain is in the resistance. It's in saying, this is not how things should be. For me, surrender, and I'm not good at it, means giving up the stubborn belief that life should be fair or make sense in any given moment. Sometimes surrender comes after life gets so bad there's nothing left to do. It can happen during a screaming meltdown. It can happen quietly, like an alcoholic who finally opens a door to a meeting. Somehow, room has been made for the divine presence. Surrender is feeling a sense of peace and presence, knowing that all is well, no matter how things turn out. So, acceptance, this is the way things are now, and surrender, all is well, even if I can't see it. There is good here for me. I'm not saying what happened is good. I'm saying there's good in it for you. Another spiritual tool to use while you're in the hallway, I almost hate to have to tell you this, is forgiveness. No matter what put you in the hallway, you probably have someone to forgive. The boss who fired you, the spouse who walked out, maybe a doctor who missed an early diagnosis, the parent who needed so much care for so long, and even forgiving God. Forgiveness is to stop insisting on what ought to have happened instead. The Greek word to forgive means to untie the knot. We have to untangle ourselves from the past in order to move forward. And you know, forgiving does not condone the act. There's a story in the book about a woman who forgave the man who raped her. It was not okay for him to do what he did, and she's glad he's in prison. But she also knew it was not okay for her to hate. She didn't want one event and one sick man to control the rest of her life. So she just became willing to forgive. She didn't even realize she had done it until one day she took some teddy bears to a rape crisis center, and she felt nothing in particular, nothing in the pit of her stomach, no fear, no memories. She was healed. She was free. Forgiveness. And of course, prayer is a crucial part of the hallway. Nearly everyone with a hallway story mentions the power of prayer, their own prayers and the prayers of others for them. One man who was in a coma for nearly 2 months said later he could feel the prayers for him. He said it felt like being struck by tiny pellets. He said, like a bottlenose dolphin might nudge a drowning man toward the surface of the water. Isn't that a good description? I've always offered 2 prayers for your spiritual work in the hallway. I'll warn you, they are powerful, even dangerous. The first one is, reveal what needs to be revealed and heal what needs to be healed. You could spend the rest of your life working on what comes out of that. Reveal what needs to be revealed and heal what needs to be healed. And the other one is, lead me where you need me and speak to me in ways I cannot possibly misunderstand. That is a brave prayer. But watch what happens. If your life is like mine, you'll end up in unexpected places doing things you never thought you could do. I've learned a couple more prayers for the hallway. Show me my perfect place of service. Your service might be a paid or not paid. It could be spending time with your grandchildren these years. And it'll change over time, but everyone can be guided to a perfect place of service. That's the door you're looking for. And the other prayer is from a friend who says all her prayers over the years have boiled down to one line: I hold all possibilities. The hallway is a place of infinite possibilities. So you see, your time in the hallway is never wasted. Use it for your growth and learning. It can become a pivot point for your life. And how the heck do you get out? When I started talking about the hallway all those years ago, I thought you just had to wait for God to spring open a door. Now I think there's a lot more you can do. But let me ask you a question first. Do you want to leave the hallway? Because it can get really comfortable. Some people install carpet and air conditioning. I talked to one woman who wants to feng shui her hallway. Because you might be getting a lot of sympathy and attention in there. You might be stuck in telling your story. It's become your identity. And you might feel guilty for moving on. And leaving the hallway requires some decisions, like answering the question, what do you want? Because you are the creator of your experience and you get to design your life, always. So here's what I know for sure about leaving the hallway. Consciousness shifts first. And by that I mean your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, your attitudes, hopes, and expectations, conscious and unconscious, rise to a new level, expand into new awareness. You might not see a change in your outer circumstances yet, but life starts to feel different. You're looking forward more than back, and you start to ask yourself, what do I want? This is where you get to pull out all the fun spiritual tools. Write your vision, imagine a new life, set intentions, and let the universe figure out how to bring it about. And I'm very aware that I'm saying you can create a life you love right after I told you to surrender and let go of the outcome. Somehow it's both and. The spiritual path is full of paradoxes. Our job is to create the conditions for an abundant life, like preparing a garden, planting seeds. We're not in control of how the rain and the soil and the sun turn those little seeds and bring them out of the ground and make them flowers and vegetables. But we create the conditions for flowering, and we decide which seeds to plant. We set intentions. If you don't know what you want yet, go for the feeling. How do you want to feel? Joyful? Grateful? Lovable? Fulfilled? Set an intention to feel that way and see what shows up. You don't have to visualize every detail of your future. If you did, you would be limited by your imagination. Set the direction you want to go and let life unfold to reveal your highest good. There's nothing wrong with wanting more. You remember what Emily Cady said in Lessons in Truth, the first book Unity ever published. She said, desire is God tapping on your heart, letting you know what's available to you. If it weren't available, you wouldn't even think of it. Infinite supply is waiting to meet our little demands. So think bigger. And remember, help is available, divine help and human help. Once you set an intention, exactly the right people will show up to guide you, ideas and money will materialize, and doors will open. Most of the time. There's a whole chapter in the book called, Why Isn't This Working? One woman said, what if you try to follow your bliss and your bliss doesn't want you? So you probably can expect delays in the hallway. Sometimes everything falls into place so fast your head spins. But I found with the delays that we're being guided even when we feel forgotten by God. And I don't have time to tell you those stories, but this has happened to some of you. Sometimes a delay helps you realize you're asking for the wrong things. There's something else you really want. Or maybe a delay is necessary to line up the people and circumstances you need. And delay can be caused by the blocks in us, our thoughts and beliefs that hold our good at bay. You might be afraid of change. You might be afraid of failure and afraid of success. You might not believe you're worthy of what you want. So there's more inner work to do. Don't worry if the process is slow. Consciousness has to shift first. Inner change precedes outer change. That's why we do all this spiritual work in the hallway, so we can open the next door onto what we really, truly want. The hallway's a busy place. But after hearing so many hallway stories and looking at what it takes and what works for people, I've come to the conclusion you really only need to do one thing to get through the hallway and design what's behind the next door. You want to know the one thing? Because it's hard. Become willing to be uncomfortable in the interest of your own growth. Become willing to be uncomfortable in the interest of your own growth. That means sit with uncertainty or frustration or grief. Feel whatever comes up for you, and yes, it will be hard sometimes. But if you are willing to be uncomfortable without reaching for something to numb the feelings, to explore the lessons that it brings, you'll find yourself at a new level, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, maybe even physically. The hallway might start with shame, blame, anger, fear, panic. Eventually comes acceptance. This is where I am now. And then surrender. This must be happening for me, so I'll look for the good. I know God is in this situation. And then do the work. Forgiveness, prayer. Let others pray for you. Borrow their faith. And when you're ready to move forward, invoke the spiritual laws you know. You are a divine being put on earth with all the attributes of God. You are the creator of your experience. Thoughts attract whatever you need or want. It is true, much of our creating goes on unconsciously because we don't always know what's best for us. Fortunately, each of us has a higher self that's always on the job, never sleeps, working on our behalf, and we can work with that higher consciousness or not. We can live either by design or default, but we're creating all the time. Our thoughts become things. Our lives reflect our consciousness, whatever it is. It's worth it to stay awake, to pay attention, to use all the spiritual tools at your disposal, knowing that there might be delays or surprises, and even those have a divine purpose. There are no victims, only volunteers. Our souls volunteered for spiritual growth in this human lifetime. Being in the hallway is an opportunity for that growth. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's temporary, and you're not alone. Everyone goes through this. Even if others can't imagine your unique circumstances, God knows what they are. God is in every circumstance. Good is in every circumstance. I heard something the other day that made me think of you all as a church in the hallway searching for your next minister. It came from a very experienced minister who's about to retire. He said, in a vital, healthy church, you'll be happy 75% of the time. The other 25%, you give up what you want for what someone else wants. So not everything will meet your personal standards. Not every song, not every change in the building, not every Sunday talk, not every minister. But if you can leave here on Sundays or after a meeting or a class thinking you agreed with 75% of what was done, or maybe you like 3 out of every 4 people, that's a healthy church. I know that's who you are, and I can't wait to see what happens when you open the next door. Thank you so much.